George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. We are so pleased to be joined by Ashara Baker. She's got a community conversation that she's going to have on December 7th at the Bethany Baptist Church, 149 Beatty Street in Syracuse. She's the New York State Director for the National Parents Union and co-founder of the New York State Charter Parent Council. Welcome to the program. And Ashara, tell us about how you got involved in the work that you do.
Well, thank you for having me. Uh, my work started out, I kind of fell into this line of work, I'll say that. Initially, I started a job that was through the district attorney's office in Rochester, and it was essentially to be a caseworker for young men in a secured facility.
Hmm.
I soon realized that a lot of these young men that I was working with enrolling in high school, 17, 18 years old, couldn't read a Seabiscuit run book or a Bernstein's and Bears book. And I was alarmed at the lack of urgency and awareness of how far behind children in the community were. Ever since then, I've been in the education space and the advocacy space, specifically for parents. I am a parent of an 8-year-old girl and a step parent to a 13-year-old boy. So I'm definitely in the work, and I'm experiencing things similar as the families that we serve across the country.
Yeah, and you recently released a report called Critical Condition: The State of Education in New York 2024. What are some of the things that you have found, aside from the story you just told? What are some of the critical things? Because we find ourselves at these particular moments in history when we talk about the need to improve educational outcomes, and it's tricky because it sometimes it falls really on parents who are the primary educators, yet that responsibility seems to be unclear. So what are you finding?
So within this report, the report essentially started out because I was having conversations with parents across the Big Five districts. So Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, and New York City. Within the conversation, the first thing that came to the surface was families didn't know how their kids were performing, whether it was good or bad. They weren't getting communication. They didn't feel like their district was transparent around curriculum that they were using or weren't using. The second piece was we looked at the numbers. You can't make these numbers up. There are, within the 2023 state assessment data, within Rochester alone, we have 2% of eighth graders who were proficient in math. And these are students that are now in high school with very little resources, very little regard to how they were showing up and being present in eighth grade. The same goes for our capital. Um, some larger figures that I determined was that within um, basically upstate New York, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Albany, we have 80% of both Black and Hispanic students who are not proficient in reading and math. So this is something to sound the alarm off about. Our kids have been struggling prior to COVID, but it impacts them deeply even more now because what I've seen is across the country, there's been a lot of states who've adopted legislation to support learning loss. There have been a ton of states who have adopted legislation around the right to read and addressing evidence-based reading material that can support students as well as support educators. And there's been states who have adopted numeracy legislation, so legislation that provides higher quality instruction for math. We haven't done that in the state of New York.
And so this is where I get I'm perplexed, right? Because you point out these statistics, and fairly so, and this is why you're having the rally, community conversation December 7th at Bethany Baptist Church, 12 to 2:30. Refreshments will be served, and it's also in cooperation with the 100 Black Men of Syracuse. And so when I hear those statistics, I'm saying, okay, so what do we want more of, right? Because what teachers will say is that it's challenging for them for a variety of reasons. But where do you lay the blame on this? Is it the administrative? Is it the classroom? Is it who's not doing what? which is causing our children in particular to not excel in the basics reading and math.
So that's the complicated thing. My report, I lay it out in the first page. It isn't a report to place blame on any stakeholder. It's really showing, in your lane of accountability.
Okay.
If you're a legislator, you need to be the muscle and ensure that we have proper legislation that protects all students across the state. If you're an educator, advocating for better professional development or really putting pressure on your individual district as far as the curriculum that they're using. If your superintendents, ensuring that your teachers are getting the professional development that they need, so they're not left on an island. If your parents really, ensuring that you have a line of communication with your school and your teachers is key. Uh, but I don't think that this is a situation of blame. This is really a situation of addressing inconsistencies, addressing state funding that is allocated in the wrong way, addressing curriculum that we shouldn't be using that has been proven ineffective. So if we're investing money in something that everyone else is saying isn't working, maybe we should recalibrate and determine other curriculum that we should be using for these kids because a lot of states have already made that very clear.
Oh, thank God we're in New York, right? And that at least we have the ability to advocate. So at the rally, at the community meeting, what do you hope? What are some of the things that you're going to tell parents to do? For example, you suggest that there's some other options available to for parents to supplement, right? So I keep going back to some parents who are not in the who are not able to even support their students academically. Let's speak to that for a minute with about 2 minutes left.
Absolutely. I mean, there are tutoring centers. I'd assume there are a number of resources. I have some connections with the Reading League within the Syracuse community. There are resources out there that can really support families. I know there are a lot of libraries who have taken on this work of early literacy and getting books that kids can work through. So I'm going to speak to all those things. I'm the parent that I drive 30 minutes away so my kid can get tutoring because I don't have any quality tutors in the city of Rochester. It's hard, but I think having the conversation, understanding the red flags, understanding what your rights are is the first step as a parent. And supporting legislation in this upcoming legislative session and having conversations with your legislators is also important. So they understand you're informed and they need to act on your behalf as the constituent asks.
And all of these things will be discussed at the meeting of on December the 7th at Bethany Baptist Church, 149 Beatty Street in Syracuse. Uh, Ashara will be talking about her recently released report, Critical Condition, the State of Education in New York, and talk about resources that you may not be aware of that are available in the community. I know Bethany, for example, is one of the tutoring sites helping to support students who are needing extra attention. And there is a critical need for increased literacy in our community. So I know you'll speak to that and all of the options. One thing I do understand, Ashara, is that you're gonna, like you said, there's a whole lot of stakeholders that have a role to play, and you'll identify those things and give us some action steps and plans to make all of that happen. So I look forward to December the 7th. It's the 100 Black Men of Syracuse presenting Ashara Baker, who is the national director, the New York State Director for the National Parents Union and co-founder of the New York State Charter Parent Council. I'm sure you'll talk a little bit about charter schools as well. The 100 Black Men, of course, as you know, are looking to have a charter school here in
Absolutely.
the city of Syracuse. So Ashara, thank you for
Thank you.
coming on the show today. We look forward to seeing you. Don't forget, mark your calendars. December 7th, Bethany, 12 to 2:30. And by the way, refreshments will be served. So there you go. Ashara, thank you so much. Inspiration for the nation.
Thank you.